The search goes on for a 13-year-old girl who disappeared almost 2 weeks ago.
13-year-old Christina Williams mysteriously vanished while walking her dog. The search for the teenager brought friends, family, and celebrities out in force.
I'm sure everybody out there can totally sympathize with the grief that Christina's family is going through.
They had found Greg, the dog, a short time later, dragging his leash. Christina Williams had vanished. There was little to go on. Every angle was examined, every possibility reviewed over and over again. But there was no sign of Christina Williams.
Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we're diving into the case of Christina Williams, a 13-year-old girl who went missing while walking her dog on a military base in June of 1998. Her case would gain national attention, with celebrities such as Mariah Carey and Clint Eastwood getting involved in the search. Born on May 1, 1985 in Okinawa, Japan, Christina was the third child of parents Michael and Alice Williams. Her father Michael was a chief officer in the United States Navy, and after spending many years overseas, the family got the news that they'd be moving to California. This was exciting for Christina, as she'd always wanted to become a famous singer, and was now living only a few hours away from Hollywood. The family had found a home on the Fort Ord military base, a base that had officially closed in 1994, but was still being occupied by thousands of residents. At the time of her disappearance, Christina attended Fitch Middle School in Seaside, California, and was beloved by many teachers and classmates. She was a member of the school's choir and had a passion for writing. The family had only been living in the U.S. for a short time and looked forward to creating a happy life where they were now stationed. But sadly, that dream would ultimately never come to fruition. On Friday, June 12, 1998, at roughly 7:30 p.m., Christina decided to take her dog named Greg for a walk. She had gotten Greg as a birthday gift just 2 months prior, and was eager to spend the first weekend of summer vacation outside with him. Before she left, she asked her mother, who was lying down on the sofa, for permission, and stated that she would only be gone a few minutes. But sadly, that would be the last time anyone would ever see or hear from her.
It was just after 7 on a warm summer evening when Alice Williams got home from a long day at work. The exhausted mother slumped into her couch as her 13-year-old daughter, Christina, asked if she could take her dog Greg for a walk on the Fort Ord military base where they lived.
Christina said, "I think Greg wants to walk." I said, "Okay, but don't stay long."
When Christina would walk Greg, how long would she usually be gone for?
Mostly about 10-15 minutes, she come back.
Alice closed her eyes and dozed off. She woke up to bad news.
My son woke me up. He said, "Mom, Christina was not home yet." Then I look at the time. I said, "Oh my gosh, it's been a long time, almost hours. She's gone."
Alice, her husband Michael, and their children had just moved to Fort Ord. The sprawling former Army base was now the home to thousands of military families. Alice was concerned that Christina had gotten lost in her new surroundings.
I told my son, "Get your bike and ride around and look for Christina." About 15-20 minutes, he come back. He said, "Mom, I didn't see Christina."
Alice stepped outside, and her fear turned into full-blown panic. She saw Christina's dog Greg coming up the street with his leash dragging behind him.
Once Christina's mom seen their dog come home alone, she instantly knew something was wrong and ran in search of her. But by the time she reached the end of the block, she seen her husband and Christina's father pulling in from work and rushed to tell him the news.
I got home about 8:45, and my wife was standing outside. As soon as I got out, she said that Christina is missing. And I said, "What do you mean by missing?" Then she mentioned that Greg came back trailing its leash. Obviously, that hit me like a ton of bricks.
After receiving the news, Christina's father immediately rushed to the base police station and reported her missing. A large-scale search would ensue that night, with the entire station and several neighbors getting involved.
As base police began their search, they were confident they would find the teenager.
They said, she's going to show up. There must be a simple answer.
But Mike Williams couldn't come up with a single comforting thought about why his daughter had not come home. He knew that Fort Ord had been a huge training facility. It had hundreds of heavily wooded acres and fields filled with tall grass and overgrown brush. Finding a small girl in the darkness would be a daunting task. Where exactly did you search?
There's a lot of trails. I brought Greg with me to see if Greg would pick up anything. So I just walked calling her name and hoping that she would answer.
Describe what that night was like as you waited for news about Christina.
It was a blur. Just numerous things running through my head. I tried to avoid thinking anything bad.
Originally, people theorized that Christina might have gotten attacked by a bear or snake in the area. But once canines traced her scent to the middle of an intersection, her case was labeled as a kidnapping. Her family would reach out to several news stations, and Christina's story would be broadcasted to millions over the next few days.
Christina Williams would leave her house and walk along this area as she took her dog out, as she did most every night. It was quiet, peaceful, not an area where you would think something would happen. But that night something went terribly wrong, and it was as if Christina Williams simply vanished.
After 24 hours passed with no sightings of Christina, did you begin to accept the possibility that she had been kidnapped?
I was still holding out hope that she just got lost.
The tracking dogs tracked Christina's scent from her backyard behind me to the left onto Parker Flats Cutoff, and in this general area, her scent disappeared.
With Christina's story now being shared to the public, her family relied heavily on any witnesses or sightings. They worked tirelessly for weeks, passing out thousands of flyers and hosting large-scale search parties in effort to find any clues. It wasn't until Christina's story was broadcasted on America's Most Wanted that a woman came forward and shared a disturbing encounter she had on the night of the disappearance.
The wife of a Navy officer, she had been out jogging in the Fort Ord area the night Christina was abducted.
She had stopped during her run and was stretching, and two individuals pulled up in a Ford Granada or Mercury Monarch, and she recalls them saying words to the effect of, "She's too old," and then they took off.
At the time, the young woman had dismissed the incident, but news of Christina's possible abduction made it seem incredibly important.
The police had the woman sit down with a sketch artist, where they comprised an illustration of the two alleged kidnappers. She also provided them with a description of the Ford Granada they were driving in.
What we know for sure is that these are the two individuals that verbally accosted her. We believe that these are the same individuals that are responsible for Christina's abduction.
With Christina's case now gaining even more traction, several celebrities began getting involved in the search. Clint Eastwood, Mariah Carey, and Reggie Jackson would all film public service announcements in hopes of finding her.
I'm Mariah Carey.
Some of the world's most famous faces rallied behind the Williams family. They came together to record public service announcements.
On June 12th, Christina Williams was abducted while walking her dog in Monterey County, California.
This child was abducted. She's 13 years old.
I'm sure everybody out there can totally sympathize with the grief that Christina's family is going through.
According to Christina's family, Mariah Carey was her idol and had several pictures of her on her walls. She also related to her being biracial and saw her as a positive influence in music. When her sister sat down to film the PSA with her, she stated that it was one of the most bittersweet moments of her life. She was extremely thankful, but also sad that she had to meet her sister's idol in such a tragic way.
I'm Mariah.
She hoped to walk in the footsteps of her hero, Mariah Carey. I understand Christina had the gift of a beautiful voice. Did she use it?
Yes, she was in the school chorus. She loved to sing.
Did you find it comforting to see celebrities tape PSAs?
Yeah, from the very beginning, we just had an outpouring from the community doing whatever they could to support us.
With Christina's disappearance consistently being one of the most talked about events, more tips began rolling in. A woman claimed to see a girl matching her description sitting in the back seat of a car looking scared. The vehicle also matched the make and model of the one seen in the area shortly before the disappearance.
This juvenile, who appeared to be frightened, was sitting in a vehicle described as an older model Mercury Monarch or Ford Granada.
Unfortunately, police weren't able to locate the vehicle, leaving them at a dead end once again. With it going on 2 months since Christina vanished, police were forced to call off their search parties and investigate other leads. Meanwhile, Christina's family organized a benefit concert to raise money for a reward. They raised over $100,000 to give to anyone who had any information, and yet it went unclaimed. As the new school year was beginning to start, Christina's family was hit with the realization that she might never come back. Her mom would spend countless moments crying in her room that had been left untouched all summer. And as the fall and winter months began to pass, the case would turn cold. The Williams family would sit through several holidays yearning for Christina's presence. On January 12, 1999, 7 months after her disappearance, a university student who was surveying plants with a classmate in the area came across a horrifying scene. She found the remains of a young woman who had been buried underneath lots of thick brush and had her clothes scattered around her. Familiar with Christina's story, she knew it was her based on the clothing and immediately called the police. When police arrived, they confirmed it was Christina and had to sadly deliver the news to her parents.
Ultimately, it was dental records that conclusively identified the victim as Christina Williams. After informing the Williams family, the FBI held a press conference to confirm the terrible news.
It is my sad duty to announce that the body found January 12, 1999 is that of Christina Williams. I hope you understand that this is a very sad time for the Williams family. It is also a very sad time for the investigative family.
The Williams would release a statement to the reporters who were camped on their lawn shortly after, where they thanked everyone who helped them. It was actually her mom Alice's birthday, which made the whole thing even more heartbreaking. Mariah Carey would also release a statement later that day, sending her condolences to the entire family. As the family began planning Christina's funeral, the university student who found her remains ended up making a memorial for her.
It was 7 months to the day from when Christina disappeared till her remains were found. And while one question was answered, there were so many that were not. Today, she is still remembered on this spot, including this plaque. It reads, "A gift from God, Christina will always be remembered as a loving daughter to her parents and a compassionate sister to our community. May each of us do everything possible to prevent this from happening to any of our children ever again."
The entire community showed up to support. Over 4,000 people would attend her service, and now that they were able to find and lay her to rest, their focus shifted to finding her killer. The police re-questioned several people, and since Christina was found less than 3 miles away from her home, they went through old records to see if any offenders lived in the area. One of the people they suspected early on was a neighbor named Charles Holyfield. Charles was a convicted predator who was out on parole at the time of the disappearance. But once police questioned him, his girlfriend provided an alibi, and as their attention shifted to other leads, they kept him in the back of their minds. A whole decade would pass and authorities still believed Charles was responsible. Christina's family would annually speak to the public, pleading for any answers and sharing her story.
We are beginning tonight, marking a grim anniversary here on the Central Coast. It was 10 years ago today that the body of Christina Williams was found on the former Fort Ord. She was a 13-year-old girl who was walking her dog one night and never came home. It is a case that captured national attention, and 10 years later, it remains officially unsolved. It is far, however, from forgotten. Action News reporter Felix Cortez has an exclusive interview tonight with Christina's family.
It's been a gradual healing process.
But Christina's father, Michael Williams, says the pain still lingers long after the disappearance and murder of his 13-year-old daughter, Christina Williams.
But we always think of her, and she's always in our mind. But dates like this, it makes it difficult.
And 10 years ago, this Monday marks a tragic anniversary. That's when the young girl's badly decomposed body was found on the former four-door. She went missing 7 months earlier after taking her dog, Greg, for a walk.
Now that it's been 10 years, it's, our life is, for the most part, back to normal, except for the times just like coming up here now, where there's a special day that we look at as far as helps us remember her, and that makes it difficult.
It was a case that shocked the Central Coast and made headlines all across the country. An innocent girl kidnapped and murdered while out for a walk. FBI agents worked more than 10,000 tips. They used satellite photos to try and ID a suspect or vehicle. They even brought in psychics to crack the case. Former FBI agent Rick Lack was one of the lead investigators.
It's a case that still haunts me. It really does. It haunts me to this day. It's my greatest failure. I mean, I was not able to resolve this case before I retired in 2004.
Lack says the FBI has a pretty good idea who killed Christina Williams, but they're not going to say who it is. Lack says this man, Charles Holyfield, is a person of major interest, a convicted rapist who's doing life in prison for rape and attempted kidnapping. Problem is, the FBI doesn't have the evidence to convict their man.
But as far as having something that we can walk into a courtroom and prove beyond a reasonable doubt, we do not have that. It will take a confession.
Until then, a family holding on dearly to the memories of their loved one while holding out hope her killer will be found.
That's the big last piece of the puzzle that needs to be taken care of, is to find someone who committed this incredibly heinous crime, and that should never, ever be allowed to happen. At that, there's going to be a spot there, obviously, forever for Christina.
And by the looks of it, Christina continues to hold a place in the hearts of many people here on the Central Coast. As you just saw, people continue to visit this makeshift memorial that was put up shortly after the body of Christina Williams was discovered. They come, they place flowers, small mementos, all in honor of the memory of Christina Williams. Reporting live from Fort Ord, I'm Felix Cortez. Dan and Aaron, back to you in the studio.
All right, Felix, thanks very much. The investigators say they are hoping that advances in DNA technology will also help. They plan to test some evidence that was found at the scene, trying to get a DNA print of the killer.
In the following years, Christina's family would create a foundation in her honor, where they financially helped the families of children who had been abducted. Their help would lead to a killer being caught in the case of Sierra Lamar, a 15-year-old who went missing on the way to her bus stop in 2012. In 2016, it was announced that Christina's case would be reopened due to advancements in DNA technology. The authorities also re-interviewed the ex-girlfriend of Charles, where they received shocking news. She stated that Charles wasn't actually with her that night, and that she had been threatened to lie for him. She also stated that she had no idea of his criminal past, and that Charles told her he was on parole for a bar fight, not for being a predator. All authorities were waiting on now was a positive DNA match, and to their joy, it was. On April 6, 2017, Charles Holyfield was arrested for the murder of Christina Williams nearly 20 years later.
Well, Dan, Aaron, it didn't take long for investigators to focus their attention on Charles Holyfield early on in this case, but they just didn't have the evidence to charge him. Today, prosecutors dropping a bombshell saying they now have DNA evidence.
We will be charging Mr. Holyfield with first-degree murder.
It was an announcement nearly 2 decades in the making. Prosecutors announcing they will charge Charles Holyfield with the kidnapping and murder of Christina Williams. And they say they have the DNA evidence to prove it.
There was a DNA match. That, in conjunction with all of the other evidence that had been developed by the various agencies led us to the position we are in today, that we do have evidence, we believe, where we could sustain our burden of proving guilt beyond a reasonable doubt.
The 56-year-old Holyfield had early on been suspected of nabbing the 13-year-old as she walked her dog near her four-door home. Holyfield had a history of assaulting and raping teens, and just 3 months after Christina disappeared, he attempted to kidnap a Marina woman at gunpoint. With insufficient evidence to charge Holyfield, the case went cold, until last year when a cold case review team requested items be retested for DNA. They got a hit, and it led to Holyfield and Thursday's surprise announcement.
The Peninsula Cold Case Project. When agencies work together, share information, and share resources, cases like this can be solved.
The FBI has a long memory. Time nor distance keeps us from our attention in solving cases such as this.
Former FBI agent Rick Lack worked on the Christina Williams case until he retired 6 years later. He never gave up hope the case would be solved.
It's satisfying. It's extremely satisfying to me that it's finally happened, that there's great evidence out there to hold this person responsible that can withstand the government's burden of proof, and DNA is pretty dynamite evidence. I couldn't be happier.
Now, prosecutors say they will formally file their charges against Charles Holyfield next Friday of next week. Plan to charge him with first-degree murder, kidnapping, lewd acts with a child. Now, taking into consideration his previous strikes, Holyfield could be facing the death penalty if convicted. Prosecutors now in the process of filing paperwork to have Holyfield transferred from a state prison where he's currently doing 25 years of life on those previous convictions. Reporting from Salinas, I'm Felix Cortez. Dan and Aaron, back to you in the studio.
I talked with Christina's father, Michael Williams, at length this afternoon about the DA's announcement.
All that stuff just started to flood back. All those memories started to flood back of going through it. It's opening the scab back up that you thought was healed. Somebody just is starting to slowly rip it open again. And if we want justice, then this is the steps that need to be taken. We want this to have been done many, many years ago, obviously. Him to be found convicted if the evidence presents itself, which I'm sure it will.
Christina's parents were happy to hear that justice was finally going to be served, even though it took 20 years to get it. Prosecutors wanted Charles to receive the death penalty, and a trial would be set for October of 2019.
Dan, Aaron, today's court appearance was very short. In a matter of moments, prosecutors had announced they will seek the death penalty against Charles Holyfield. In this video from Holyfield's short court appearance today, you can see that extra security presence around him as he's seated in white there behind extra officers. Now, prosecutors say Holyfield found out about their decision to seek the death penalty a week ago, and prosecutors also said in court today they are ready to take this case to trial now. Holyfield is charged with the kidnapping, rape, and murder of 13-year-old Christina Williams, who went missing in 1998 after taking her dog for a walk near her four-doored home. Holyfield was just charged with the murder last year after investigators retested her clothing and found his DNA on it. At the time he was charged, he was already in prison for other sexual assaults on women. Now, Holyfield is expected to be back in court on August 22nd. That is when a date for a jury trial will be set. In Salinas, Brittany Nielsen, KSBW, Action News 8.
Charles would ultimately waive his right to a trial by jury in order to remove the possibility of receiving the death penalty. In March of 2020, the non-jury trial took place, and Charles was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. After 22 years, Christina finally got the justice she deserved. She had a whole life ahead of her, and it was taken just so a monster can live out his sick fantasies. I pray that she's at peace now that her killer has been caught, and I admire her parents for their persistence and dedication to their child. As of now, Fort Ord is officially closed, but military personnel come every couple months to maintain Christina's memorial and to pay their respects. Plans were made to build a new development on the land, but got put to a halt during the COVID-19 pandemic. The Williams Foundation is still up and running, where the goal is to raise awareness and help the families of child abductees. They've made an impact on dozens of cases over the years by turning their pain into philanthropy, something I'm sure Christina is truly proud of. Anyways, that's pretty much all I have for today. If you made it this far, I genuinely appreciate you. Be sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you all in the next one.